Hey guys, how's it going? MikeTheTech here. Today I want to show you how to install Linux Mint 18 in VirtualBox. So I've already downloaded Linux Mint 18 right here, and that is that features Cinnamon 3.2, and I got the 64-bit version. You want to get the version for whatever your CPU supports. If you have an older CPU that only supports 32-bit, you'd go to 32, but if it supports 64-bit virtualization, you'll just choose 64. So once you have VirtualBox installed, and if you don't know where to get that, it's at virtualbox.org, and if you need help installing it, I have a video on how to install VirtualBox on Windows, which you can find on my channel. And once you have it installed and open, you're just going to hit New to create a new virtual machine. And we're going to name this Linux Mint 18. And we can see it automatically chose Linux Ubuntu, which seems like it's wrong, but Linux Mint is actually based on Ubuntu, and this is the closest setting that works pretty well. So we'll go ahead and hit Next, and we can see that it recommends 1024 megabytes of RAM at least. So we're going to go ahead and up this to 2048 because my system has 8 gigs, and 2 gigs shouldn't be too taxing. You don't want to use all of your memory because you want to leave some available for your base system to use. You don't want to say I want to give the whole 8 gigs to it, because then you might have your main system crash because not enough is available. So I'm going to stay in the safe range, in the screen range, and get 2 gigs, 2048, sorry, and we'll hit Next. And then we have our hard disk, which we're going to create, and it's a virtual hard disk because if we gave it to, if we gave access to our main hard drive, it would cause issues with the with our main system. So we want to create a virtual hard drive for it to work in kind of like an isolated environment. So we'll leave this as create a virtual hard disk. And then we have 3 choices. VDI is for VirtualBox, and that's a VirtualBox disk image. And VHD is the Windows standard of virtual machines, and if you use any kind of Windows virtualization, you might want to choose this. VMDK is another standard format that's used by a VMware workstation and programs like that. So if you use any of those programs, you might want to choose these. If you just use VirtualBox, or you're just going to use VirtualBox in this case, just choose VDI and that'll work perfectly for you. So we'll hit Next. And then we can choose dynamically allocated or fixed sized. If you don't want it to take up too much space and you want it to be a certain size, like 15 gigs or 20 gigs or something like that, then you would choose fixed size. If you want it dynamically allocated, it will create a hard drive for you, and then as you add more content, it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. It won't get smaller, but it'll automatically resize, so you don't have to create more partitions or virtual drives. But we are going to choose, let's go ahead and choose fixed size, because I want to just leave it in a fixed environment. So we'll hit Next. And we're going to choose, so Linux Mint actually takes a little bit more than 10 gigabytes. So we're going to give it 15, just to be safe. And we'll hit Create. And it's going to take a little bit longer to create a fixed drive versus a dynamically allocated drive, because dynamically allocated can make a really small drive at first and then have it expand. For this case, we're actually creating a full 15 gigabyte file to act as a hard drive, so it can take a little bit. So we'll just wait for this to finish up. All right. So we have our Linux Mint virtual machine, but it's not quite set up yet because we haven't even installed the software. So let's go ahead and make sure all of our settings are correct. And the one that I want to kind of point you towards is if we go to System, we see our processor, which we can adjust how many cores are assigned to the machine. We can go to Acceleration and see if our machine supports those kinds of accelerations. If it doesn't, you'll see some red text down here. If we go to Display, we can actually adjust our video memory, which is really helpful. You'll want to max this out because it's a virtual video card. It's a virtual graphics card, because it's not actually going to pass through the full power of your hardware. It's virtualizing it. So even though you have say 2 gigs of memory on your graphics card, you're realistically only going to be able to make use of the virtual amount of 128, maybe 256 tops. And that's just a limitation of the software itself. So then we can go to storage, and this is where we're actually going to see our SATA controller with our virtual hard drive that we created, and then our empty CD drive. And for our empty CD drive, we actually want to load up the Linux Mint ISO that we downloaded earlier. So I have mine here, Linux Mint 18 64-bit ISO, which you can get from their website. And there's plenty of mirrors, so you could even choose a mirror that's close to your location, which will probably get you faster speeds or a more reliable connection. So you'll go ahead and click on this little CD here, and we'll choose virtual optical disk file. And we'll go to our desktop because that's where I saved mine. And Linux Mint 18 is right here. You may have downloaded yours into your downloads folder or wherever your default downloads folder is on your machine. I saved mine to my desktop. So I'll click on that and hit open. And now the virtual CD is in the virtual drive. So we'll hit OK. And we can hit start. Now you want to make sure that you do give it more than 10 gigs because if you just give it the exact 10 gigs, I believe Linux Mint needs like 10.15 or something, so it's not enough to run the system on. So it looks like Linux Mint is loaded up fine from the CD, and it's automatically going to boot. We can just wait for that to finish. And there's the startup sound. Our background is up. We're running in rendering mode because we don't support full 3D acceleration. And here's our installer. So let's click on Install Linux Mint. Double click on that, I should say. And it'll load up into our installer. We'll choose our default language here, and I'm going to choose English, and we'll hit continue. Now we can choose install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware, Flash, MP3, and other media. So this just means do you accept installing more than just Linux Mint, but some of the libraries that are required for other parts of usage of Linux Mint. So I'll go ahead and click on yes for this and hit continue. Alright, so now we can choose how to install the machine, and we can choose erase disk and install Linux Mint, encrypt the new Linux Mint installation for security, use LVM with a new Linux Mint installation, or something else. And we're going to leave this at erase disk and install Linux Mint. And it gives you a warning that says this will delete all your programs, documents, photos, music, and any other files in all operating systems. Sounds a little scary, but it's limited to the virtual machine, so we want to remember that. Your outside machine, like all of these files, these are all going to be fine. But inside, if you had anything in that virtual drive, which we don't because we just created it, it will get deleted, which that's what we want to do. So we'll leave that as is, and we'll hit install now. Do we want to continue? Right changes to disk. Continue. You can choose to encrypt the new Linux Mint installation if you'd like, but it's not necessary. I'm going to leave this as is because I'm actually in Monterey County, which is closest to LA. So we'll continue. We can choose our keyboard layout, which I'll leave default. If you use something interesting like Dvorak, you can find it here, or if you use another language keyboard like Spanish or something, so you can get extra characters, you can use that. We'll continue. And then we could add our information, so I can say, okay, MikeTheTech, password. I'm going to leave it as something weak because it's just a virtual machine and I'm not going to be actually using this machine, so I'll leave that as is. And I'll just say, yeah, we could require a password to log in. So let's see, this has to be lowercase. There we go, and we'll hit continue. And now the installation has started, and this could take a while depending on your hard drive and just however long it takes to copy over the files. So we'll hang out a bit and I'll come back once this is finished. Alright, so Linux Mint is finished installing, and we could either continue testing or restart now. We want to restart now. Now in theory this should eject that virtual disk image, but sometimes it doesn't work. So as we can see here, it didn't quite work. So if we go ahead and we can shut this down. We could go into our optical drive actually and remove it, but let's go ahead and go to ACPI shutdown. And we can go to devices, I guess, and do that. So force unmount, that will get rid of the disk image, so to unmount it there, and then we hit enter. But basically we want to go to the settings and go into our optical drive that we created and remove that virtual disk image of the installation file, because we already have the operating system installed in the virtual drive folder, so we don't need the disk anymore. And look at this, we have this beautiful cinnamon style intro window. MikeTheTech, my name here. We'll select the user, we'll type in the password, and we'll load up into our virtual Linux Mint 18. Here's a startup sound, and we're in. Alright, so this is the Serena release, and it is on Cinnamon 64-bit. You can view all the new features, view your apps, check your drivers or update your drivers, and go into your main menu system right here with all of your new software that you can play with. Alright, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below, and I hope this helped you install Linux Mint 18.1. Thanks very much, and thanks for watching. Alright, bye. Peace.